fund a $50 billion loan for Ukraine will head to Estonia, a key supporter of Ukraine, to speak to the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament there.
We'll talk to a leading American politician who has some strong views about foreign support fueling the war in Sudan.
And Celine Dion talks to us about finding, refinding, and rebuilding her voice.
I'll be on stage. I don't know when exactly, but trust me, I will scream it out loud.
To stay with us, we've also got business and sport, but first, the latest BBC World News.
Hello, I'm Chris Barrow with the BBC News. President Biden says a 10-year security agreement he signed with Volodymyr Zelensky will give a long-term boost to Ukraine's defense and deterrence capabilities. Mr. Zelensky welcomed the deal as a bridge towards membership of NATO. James Landell reports.
Relations between Washington and Kiev have been strained this year by delays to a financial support package. But at the G7 summit last night, Joe Biden stood shoulder to shoulder with President Zelensky. The US president agreed a defense pact to boost Ukraine's military capabilities and bring it closer to NATO membership. He said Ukraine would also receive 5 desperately needed Patriot air defense systems relatively quickly. This came after G7 leaders agreed to raise a $50 billion loan for Ukraine from frozen Russian assets and expand anti-Russia sanctions.
Tesla shareholders have approved Elon Musk's $56 billion pay package, despite opposition from some big investors. Erin Delmore reports.
This shareholder vote puts Elon Musk one step closer to becoming the most generously compensated chief executive in U.S. corporate history. The pay package would award Mr. Musk rights to a roughly 10% stake in Tesla, valued at around 300 times what the top-earning executive in the U.S. made last year. A Delaware judge blocked the original pay deal in January. It's unclear whether this fresh shareholder authorization will be accepted by the courts.
The UN Security Council has demanded that Sudanese paramilitaries call off their 8-week siege of El Fasher. More than 1.5 million people are sheltering in the city with hardly any food, water, and medical supplies. Britain's UN ambassador said any attempts to take the city would be catastrophic. El Fasher is the last big city in the Darfur region still in the hands of the army. South Africa's parliament is due to meet within hours for the first time since the ANC lost its majority in the elections last month. On the eve of the meeting, the ANC said it had made progress towards forming a unity government but gave new details. Barbara Platt-Usher reports.
It's expected that the current leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, will retain his seat, but last-minute talks failed to produce a formal agreement on a national unity government. The ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, told journalists a majority of parties supported the concept, but it was too early to give details. He did say it would be a move to the political center because breakaway ANC parties on the left have said they won't join. Parties that support the unity government include the Democratic Alliance. It's an advocate of free market economics at odds with the ANC's left-wing traditions and has a reputation for representing the interests of the white minority.
This is the latest world news from the BBC. The US military has announced strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen, hours after the Iranian-backed group attacked another cargo ship. US Central Command said an air defense sensor was destroyed, as well as 2 Houthi patrol boats and a maritime drone in the Red Sea. Earlier, the Houthis confirmed that they carried out a cruise missile attack. May's inflation figure for Argentina shows the lowest monthly rate for 2.5 years. The 4.2% figure was the 5th straight monthly fall. President Javier Milei has been pushing his controversial austerity measures to reduce Argentina's annual rate, among the highest in the world. The decline is attributed to a fall in consumption. Early clinical trials in the United States have shown that a particular combination of immunotherapy drugs may successfully treat the most common form of bowel cancer. The drug combination was found to halt or shrink 3 out of 5 tumours over a period of 6 months. Researchers hope late-phase trials will confirm their findings. Researchers in the United States say Pacific Coast grey whales have sharply diminished in size. The average length of adults is now 13% shorter than 24 years ago. Grant Ferret has this read.
The grey whales being studied were part of a subgroup that stays close to the US Pacific coast, feeding in relatively shallow, warm water. Scientists from Oregon State University and the University of St. Andrews used drones to photograph more than 100 of them over the course of 8 years. They discovered that an average adult is now over 1.5 meters shorter than at the turn of the century. They say this raises questions about the health and viability of the Pacific Coast grey whale population. The cause of the decline is unclear. Initial theories include human activity and changes caused by global warming.
And that's the latest BBC News.
Thank you for that news. Hello and welcome to Newsday on the BBC World Service with Victoria Wondender and James Cotnell. In the programme today, we'll talk to leading politicians in Europe and North America. We'll hear from a global singing superstar. We'll consider conflicts on 2 continents. We have sports and business as well, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on any of that. Our number for your WhatsApp and text messages is +44 77 86 20 15 85.
The US and Ukraine have agreed a new 10-year security deal. The agreement was signed by US President Joe Biden and his Ukrainian counterpart, President Volodymyr Zelensky, at the sidelines of the G7 summit, the meeting of the leaders of the world's biggest economies. The deal could theoretically be undone by a future US administration, but Mr. Biden said he was confident this would herald a new era.
Our goal is to strengthen Ukraine's credible defense and deterrence capabilities for the long term. A lasting peace for Ukraine must be underwritten by Ukraine's own ability to defend itself now and to deter future aggression anytime in the future. The United States is going to help ensure that Ukraine can do both, not by sending American troops to fight Ukraine, but by providing weapons and ammunition, expanding intelligence sharing, continuing to train brave Ukrainian troops at bases in Europe and the United States, investing in Ukraine's defense industrial base, so in time, they can supply their own weapons and ammunition.
President Zelensky says the deal will benefit not only Ukraine, but the world.
Dear friends, today is a truly historic day. We have signed the strongest agreement between Ukraine and the US since our independence. This is an agreement on security and thus on the protection of human lives. This is an agreement on steps to guarantee sustainable peace, and therefore it benefits everyone in the world because the Russian war against Ukraine is a real threat.
And if Russia is a threat well beyond Ukraine, Estonia is one of the countries on high alert. The Baltic nation was once under the Soviet rule and shares a border with Russia, and it is now a member of the Western Defense Alliance and NATO. Its support for Ukraine has been steadfast, including pushing for frozen Russian assets to be used to fund weapons for Ukraine. At the G7 summit, it was also agreed that those assets would be used to raise $50 billion for Ukraine to help it fight invading Russian forces. Well, we are now joined by Marko Mihkelson, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Estonian Parliament. Good morning to you and welcome to the program, Mr. Mihkelson. I want to get your thoughts and your reaction first on this 10-year security deal that was signed by Presidents Biden and Zelensky.
Yeah, very good morning. It's definitely very important and historic step forward, which at least theoretically guarantees sustainable support from the United States to Ukraine. Definitely good news and very important signal also internationally for our allies and partners of Ukraine to do similar steps.
Do you see it as a way for Ukraine to get a membership or even closer to getting a membership with NATO?
It's too early to call. There is no consensus on that. Unfortunately, Estonia and other like-minded countries and allies within NATO we have argued that we have to start invitational process for Ukraine already at the Washington summit, but it seems that we are not yet there. But most importantly, obviously, Ukraine cannot be accepted as a full member of NATO before full victory in this war. against Russian aggression, and these kind of steps and decisions which were made during a G7 summit, obviously they give a good hope for Ukraine as well to fight back Russian aggression.
I mentioned that your country, Estonia, has been a huge support of Ukraine in this war with Russia, and you've been pushing for Russian assets to be used to fund weapons and help Ukraine in their war against invading Russian army and forces. What do you make of this deal, the 50 billion fund that was put on the table?
Yeah, again, this is very, very good news. Certainly the right step in the right direction. There are countries, including Estonia, who would like to see that we will confiscate all those assets actually available right now, which are frozen around $300 billion or euros. But this decision, which was made to raise 50 billion as a loan for Ukraine to be used to fight against Russian aggression, is something which was not so given a few months ago. So it's, again, good news, right direction, and there is a growing number of countries who actually support the idea of what was proposed by Estonia.
Let's talk about that growing support by many other countries. With what we've just seen with the recently concluded European parliamentary elections, do you think that this support will continue with all those changes that are coming in place soon?
Definitely there will be more challenging moments, not so much on the level of the European Parliament, because generally this wider coalition will continue. But we will see how the parliamentary elections in France or in a number of other countries will go. And there are, of course, uphill battles here and there. But what is left to do for us is to fight back Russian aggression in Ukraine, because this is an existential threat not only for Ukraine, but for entire Western world.
Talk to us about these existential threats, considering that Estonia shares a border with Russia.
Oh yeah, no, because we have to understand what is the strategic vision and plan of Russia. Russian dictator Putin said, directly last October that this war, what he started against Ukraine already in 2014, it's not only about to change geopolitical reality in Europe or in Eastern Europe, but this is about to change the world order. And in that regard, of course, we have to pay attention that Russia is not alone in this endeavor. They are supported by China, by Iran, by North Korea, and that is much more serious, of course, challenge for all of us. And this is why the steps which were made by G7 countries, as we talk about, this is something exactly what gives also signal to Russia that we won't give up supporting Ukraine until Ukraine prevails in this war or wins this war.
Mr. Mikkelson, thank you for your time. Marko Mikkelson, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Estonian Parliament.
The United Nations Security Council has called for an immediate end to the siege of El Fasher in Sudan. The city, the last under the control of the Sudanese military in the western region of Darfur, is being attacked by the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces. The RSF has been fighting the army since April last year, forcing more than 10 million people from their homes in Sudan and driving the country to the brink of famine. So how can the war be stopped? Our next guest, a leading American politician, says that foreign powers, and in particular the United Arab Emirates, need to stop sending weapons to the conflict.
I have the paperwork.
The EU is accused of sending weapons to the RSF, a charge it has always denied, but it is an accusation made by many Sudanese and foreign experts. So here is that United States Congresswoman, Jacob,
Get out and shut it.